Hi everybody, my name is Kathleen Tabb and I'm one of the Digestive Dietitians at Rebecca Bitzer and Associates. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about gluten-free flours. So I've been gluten-free for maybe 6 years now, so over time you start to adapt to it, but one thing that is really daunting to some people is the baking process that goes through with gluten-free products, because you usually have to add something in order to compensate for the lack of the gluten. So today we're going to be talking about xanthan gum and mixture flours. This is one of my favorite flours here, the Bob's Red Mill. It's a 1-to-1 baking flour, and the difference between this flour and some of the all-purpose flours that are out there, the all-purpose gluten-free flours, is that they don't have xanthan gum. So an example of that is going to be King Arthur. Might be hard to see the label, but moral of the story is that this has no xanthan gum, and this one does. And I actually did bake 2 different brownie recipes to show you guys the difference of what they look like after. So, I mean, you can decide if you want to use it or not when it comes to brownies, but other things like cookies and cakes, etc., you're definitely going to need to compensate for the lack of a xanthan gum in a mixed flour if that's what you're using. So, like I was saying, when you are baking gluten-free and you're not using gluten, xanthan gum provides the elasticity and helps to kind of hold things together that gluten would typically do for you. So if you're making a recipe and there's no xanthan gum in it for cookies, for example, what might happen is you might have a very crumbly cookie. It's probably not going to hold together. The texture might not be very soft. It's more of a crunchy. So cookies, which I actually had an issue with cookies the other day because I tried without xanthan gum to kind of learn about it, and they were pretty much falling apart. So I made 2 different brownies today, and the first one I will show you is the brownie without the xanthan gum. Looks pretty good. It's actually, baked up pretty well. It's thick. It's pretty luscious, and it was pretty delicious. But one thing that was different with this brownie and the other brownie was that it was chewier. It was chewier, and if you can see right here, the brownies didn't cut very well. They were kind of falling apart, and they're extra fudgy, which isn't a bad thing. It's going to depend on the preference, but the second brownie we have is going to be a little bit different. So this might be easier to show you guys. All right, this is the second brownie, and this is one that I made almost identical to the first recipe, but I added xanthan gum. If you look at it, it's a little bit thinner, but it's fluffier. So it's not as dense. It's kind of like a melt in your mouth, whereas this one over here is a bit denser. So if you're looking at both, it's kind of up to you which one you prefer, whether you prefer the thick one, the thick and fudgy one, or you prefer the lighter one. And honestly, I chose the one with the xanthan gum because it's the fluffier taste. I like that, but you might be one of the fudgier ones. So that's the lesson I have for you today on gluten-free flours. If you're new to baking, I would recommend buying a baking flour that already has xanthan gum in it, because the ratios can sometimes get confusing for some people about how much to add to what. So I recommend getting a mixture flour, and probably in the beginning trying to follow a recipe before you feel comfortable to kind of branch out. So I'm gonna go eat some of these brownies, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.